Area secured. Hello, and welcome back to World History. Today, you have a mission. Should you choose to accept that mission, you will need to complete your student workbook, your lesson review for lesson 80. Well, let's just go ahead and get started, shall we? Please don't tell Mum that I shot you with a Nerf gun. Please just don't tell Mum. It's just not safe, you know, if you don't have goggles. Don't tell Mum. Lesson 80. Lesson 80 in your student textbook for world history. It's page 536. And we are going to be learning about beginnings of change in the church and government. All right, guys. I know, I'm so silly, right? Oh, it's hot. I mean, I just don't think I could be a spy because they gotta wear too much black clothing and it's really warm. Whew, okay. I'm not gonna lie, I went all out for this one. Pretty hot in here. Okay, 536 in your student textbook. Woo, all right. But I like the sunglasses. They reminded me of like Florida, like warmer days. All right, here we are. We are going to do lesson 80. I hope you had a fabulous weekend. But let's get right to it, shall we? All right, if you are in your lesson review, you're going to be on page 40. And the first question is, Callie, can you read the first question? Love Callie, Miss Callie. Callie would say, who is Peter Waldo? Well, let's find out who Peter Waldo is, shall we? Let's. Nothing is more important for a person than his or her, this is actually, okay. Nothing is more important than his or her relationship with God through Jesus Christ. This relationship is to guide a person every day in his every word, thought, and action. For a Christian, everyday life is centered in and based upon Jesus Christ. So that's can't be too silly about that because that's true, right? A Christian does not live his life on his own. If you believe you're a Christian, you believe that you don't live your life on your own. He has fellowship with other Christians, other believers who are members of the Lord's church. This fellowship provides encouragement, guidance, and sometimes correction. Correction is the hard one, isn't it? But I honestly, I mean, we learn more from correction than we do. You know, if you're always winning on a basketball team, and that's really fun. But really, when you have challenges, when you have adversity, when your team's not winning, it pushes you to go even harder, hey? And do better at the next game. So correction, guidance, it's all good. Okay, Peter Waldo and the Waldensons. Okay, during the Middle Ages, we're on page 536, follow along. During the Middle Ages, almost all believers in Western Europe were members of the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church hierarchy was powerful and controlled church practices. From time to time, individuals and groups worked to correct what they saw as errors, what the church taught and practiced. One such individual was Peter Waldo. In the late 1100s, Waldo's teaching spread from his home area in southeastern France into other parts of Europe. His followers came to be called Waldensians. I tried this several times before. Waldensians. It's not like Arminians. It's kind of harder to say. Waldo believed that the church had left many of the teachings of the New Testament. So they didn't even follow the New Testament is basically what he's saying. However, he did not want to tear down the Roman Catholic Church. He didn't want to destroy the Roman Catholic Church. No, he wanted to start a new church. His purpose was to reform the church. And the first question was, who was Peter Waldo? And here is the answer. Peter Waldo, he was a reformer. He wanted to reform the church. And that's on page 536 in the bottom paragraph. Peter Waldo preached in public, even though he was not an ordained priest. So I would put down, if it was me, I would put down his purpose was to reform the church and that he preached in public, even though he was not considered an ordained priest. Very good. All right, you can pause the video if you need to write that down. Number 2, What was the Roman Catholic Church's reaction toward Waldo and the Waldesons? I don't think they're going to have a very good reaction. It's just my personal opinion, but let's read on. This violated Catholic practice. Waldo used a translation of scripture that was in his own language and not in Latin. This also was a violation of the Catholic practice. Waldo taught that the Pope and other members of the Roman Catholic hierarchy did not have authority over persons, individuals, the lives before God. That only God himself, essentially. Okay, we're back at the top of page 537 if you want to follow along. We're still looking for what was the Roman Catholic Church's reaction toward Waldo and the Waldesons. All right. The Roman Catholic Church taught that after a Christian dies, he goes to a purgatory, a place of punishment where they believed a person atones for his sins before going to heaven. So a lot of times you look at someone's life and they think there's a special holding place. And if you're especially bad, then purgatory is going to be especially bad for you. If you weren't so bad in life, then it wouldn't be so bad for you. So this is what the Catholic Church believes. It's not taught in the Bible. And so therefore I don't believe it. But this is what the Catholic Church believed. And Waldo, Peter Waldo, taught against the belief of purgatory. Peter Waldo opposed baptizing infants. He believed that people should be baptized after they were able to repent and to confess their own faith in Jesus. When they were old enough to say, I've done wrong and I need Jesus, that's when they need to be baptized, is what Waldo thought. He taught against giving special honor to people whom the church called saints, and against the belief that church could bestow forgiving grace on people through confession to priests and through acts of penance. Okay. The Roman Catholic leader saw Waldo as a heretic, a teacher of error. And that is the answer, I believe, to question number 2. What was the Roman Catholic Church's reaction toward Waldo and the Waldesons? Well, they thought he was a heretic, a teacher of error, that he was teaching unbiblical things that went against their church. And that's what I would write down. It's the second paragraph on page 537. It's the answer for number 2. Feel free to pause the video. We're going to keep on going. Let's read what question number 3 would be. Question number 3, what term is used to describe the church's trials and heretics that began in the late 1100s? We'll be looking for that. Right. In 1215, the church began working to stop his preaching and to stop people from following him. First, the church excommunicated Waldo, which means they took him out of the church. He was no longer allowed in the church, and others in the movement. When this did not stop them, the church began to persecute the Waldesians. This persecution reduced, but did not completely eliminate Peter Walden's movement. The Inquisition. The Roman Catholic Church strongly opposed people who believed and taught things differently from their own doctrines. They began the Inquisition. That is the answer to number 3. And I'm going to explain, that's the middle paragraph right underneath the Inquisition. The Inquisition was to eliminate what the leaders saw as heresy within the church. Individual bishops oversaw districts called dioceses. In 1184, Pope Lucius III authorized bishops to search for heresies in their dioceses. Some bishops were strict in obeying the Pope's instructions and others were more lenient. So the Pope took over the process. In 1227, Pope Gregory IX appointed judges to hear cases. In 1248, the Church issued a handbook of acceptable practices or procedures for identifying and judging heretics. 4 years later, Pope Innocent IV approved the use of torture on suspected heretics. Now, mind you, this is the Roman Catholic Church having trials and saying it's okay to hurt someone if we think that they are going against the church. And we're going to talk about a little bit about that. You guys know we get to read our Bible, and that's partially in a man named William Tyndale, who translated the Bible so that everyone could read the Bible. And consequently, he was a part of one of these trials. He was actually burned at the stake for translating the Bible. He was considered a heretic. So that's how serious they took this. Church officials usually began dealing with an accused heretic. We're now on paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4 on page 537. with an increased heretic by offering minor punishments if the person admitted his error. If this did not happen, authorities conducted a trial. Few people were allowed to be present, and no one served as a defense attorney for the accused because people were afraid of being branded heretics themselves. Punishment for heresy included such things as making a pilgrimage, basically sailing you off somewhere, wearing a yellow cross, or going to prison. The church intended these punishments to lead the accused to repent of the accusations against him. Those who admitted their actions but did not recant were usually burned at the stake. Some Waldensians were convicted of heresy in the Inquisition trials and executed as a result. This is serious business. The church, the New Testament, which Peter Waldo was referring to, that the Catholic Church had lost sight of, it tells us to do what to our enemies? It says to love our enemies, and that's a very hard thing to do. As you know, sometimes it's very hard for you to love your brother or your sister, especially when they're shooting a Nerf gun at you. Right in the eye, a Nerf gun, right? That doesn't feel very good. It's not safe. But the Bible calls us to love our enemies, and that's a very hard thing to do. And this is not a very good example of that. In fact, I mean, these are all people who are supposed to be following Jesus, and now we're putting them on trial because they're not following Jesus the way that an establishment thinks. And all right, so let's get on with it. Number 4, what was the purpose of the Magna Carta? We're on the bottom of page 537. While some people were challenging the authorities of Roman Catholic Church, others were claiming rights as citizens. Governments throughout history have made choices about what rights to grant their citizens. Male citizens in Athens could take part in making laws. Citizens in Roman Empire, such as the Apostle Paul, had certain rights, and did people living under feudal systems. Nobles and Germanic tribes in the Holy Roman Empire had the right to select their kings. Turn the page to 538. Still, in general, a king claimed that all governmental authority belonged to him. English kings after William the Conqueror began the practice of issuing a charter or guarantee of liberties for the nobles, also called barons. However, King John did not issue such a charter when he became King of England in 1199. During his reign, English barons began to resent John's actions and his increased taxes. On June 15, 1215, a group of barons met with John and demanded that he put his seal of approval on what is called the Magna Carta. Okay, what's the Magna Carta? Well, here is your answer for question number 4. The document listed actions forbidden to the king and guarantees rights for the barons according to the law of England. And here is what I would put for my answer. I'm going to change now to Irish. Here's what I would put for my answer here, laddie, for number 4. And it's right there in the middle of the paragraph on page 538. If the king wanted to take action against someone, he had to follow the same laws that applied to him. Oh no, that's not what I would put. Forgive me. It's the line before that. The king could not do whatever he wanted with someone he didn't like. That is what the Magna Carta was. It was a document that said the king could not do whatever he wanted with someone he didn't like. If he didn't like somebody, he couldn't just, send that man off to the Americas, because now we have this document. However, the king could not make up the law. Instead, the king obeyed the law just like everyone else. To learn about one right guaranteed in the Magna Carta, read clause 39 on the Magna Carta in the box below, and you can do that. It's in orange. King John approved the Magna Carta, a copy of which is in the chapter house in Salisbury Cathedral, pictured below. That's a beautiful cathedral. King John did not keep his end of the agreement, and the barons began a war against him in the months that followed. John died the year after he signed the Magna Carta, and his son Henry III reached an agreement with the barons that brought about peace. The Magna Carta helped establish a foundation of personal rights of citizens and the rule of law instead of the power of individuals. This principle has inspired political freedom in nation after nation. I'm thinking that we might need another Magna Carta here in the Americas. There's a lot going on where people that don't think the same as other people, they don't get to have have social media accounts from what I'm hearing. So there's a lot of that going on. But yeah, the Magna Carta, King John didn't follow the Magna Carta, and they went to war with him, but it was his son Henry III, that made peace with the barons and followed the Magna Carta. Okay, question number 5. Why do you think the Roman Catholic Church opposed Waldo, Wickliffe, Huss, and others? Well, we got to learn about the men first. All right. New questions were on page 538. The English barons and the Waldesons were asking a question others began asking. What rights do individuals have with regard to authorities to whom they answer? The Waldesons did not want to end the Roman Catholic Church. They didn't want to close the doors to that church. They wanted to correct the practices that they believed were unscriptural, which just means the practices that were not in the Bible that some man had made up, like purgatory. You don't read about purgatory in the Old or the New Testament, so they wanted that corrected. They just wanted to go about change, but the Catholic Church didn't like that very much. If their objections were not answered, did they have the right to worship separately and follow their consciences? Were they subject to the Roman Catholic Church for their salvation? With regard to political rights, the English barons did not want to end the monarchy and begin a democracy. They were beginning to wrestle with a basic question. What was the ultimate authority in the nation? The king and whatever he said? Or the laws of a nation to which even the king was subject? Did people have the right to certain freedoms and the right to be protected from unfair treatment? It's a good question. It's a really good question. I would want that answered myself. It's a question that I have now even. I mean, it's a good question. Number 5, why do you think the Roman Catholic Church opposed these men? Okay, let's talk about John Wickliffe. John Wickliffe, born in the early 1300s, studied at Oxford University in his home country of England. He later became a Roman Catholic priest and a scholar of Oxford, a very prestigious school, very smart school, which was his alma mater. Wickliffe began speaking and writing against what he saw was an erroneous teaching and practices in the church. He said that the hierarchy of the church was not in keeping with scriptures. Wickliffe opposed the church accumulating wealth. He also objected to the church selling indulgences. Church officials sold indulgences to individuals who wanted to help a deceased loved one get out of purgatory and go to heaven. Okay, so purgatory is this fake place that's not in the Bible. I don't mean to say fake place, but it's not in the Bible. So it's this place that the Catholic Church thinks that when you die, you go to purgatory. You don't go to heaven. You don't go to the other place. You go to purgatory. And so he's wanting to set the record straight because people would give money and they would say, oh, this is for my uncle who died. I want to get him out of purgatory. He wanted to do away with all that. The Catholic Church taught that Jesus and the people who had been named saints had built up a surplus of good works. The church taught that the purchase of an indulgence would transfer the merit of good works of Jesus and the saints to their loved ones, thus enabling him or her to go to heaven. Okay. Wickliffe believed that people should have Bibles in their own languages. He thought that this would help people know and obey God's teachings. The Roman Catholic Church only allowed the Bible to be written in Latin. Since only educated people knew Latin at the time, this meant that most people could not read the Bible for themselves. Wickliffe and a few fellow scholars produced a handwritten translation of the Bible in English. A quote attributed to Wickliffe states, "This Bible is for the government of the people, by the people, and for the people." Wickliffe encouraged men to go out and preach the simple truth of the Bible and to teach his ideas about reform. He called these men poor preachers. Their critics called them law lords, from a Dutch word meaning mumbler. Interesting. Law lords. They criticized them by calling them that. The Roman Catholic Church condemned Wickliffe's teaching, banned his writings, and excommunicated him from the Roman Catholic Church. Church officials did not excommunicate. Yes, church officials did not execute Wickliffe, but some of his poor preachers were killed because of their beliefs and teachings. Wickliffe died in 1384. He is often called the Morning Star of the Reformation. In a letter to the Duke of Lancaster in 1381, Wickliffe said, "I believe that in the end, the truth will conquer." And isn't that true? The truth always comes out. We all know that, don't we? The truth always comes out, and God always knows the truth. He really does. Even if you have been wronged, or you know the truth and other people are saying things that are not true, just always know God knows the truth, okay? Okay, John Huss, Bohemian reformer. It says Jan. It could be Jan. It could be John. John Huss, who was born in 1370, was a reformer in Bohemia, which is now part of the Czech Republic. Huss learned of Wickliffe's ideas and began to teach them himself. He was especially critical of the church's wealth. Lots of money the church had. The church owned about half the property of Bohemia and imposed heavy taxes, which means they took money from the people that lived there. Huss also expressed disapproval of the sale of indulgences. Huss was arrested, put in jail, placed on trial, convicted of heresy. When he was burned at the stake in 1452, his last words were, "O holy simplicity." Who knows what he was seeing when he was burned at the stake? Those are some hard things to read. He was burned at the stake, but God never left him, even when he was being killed. He was never by himself, and we don't know. The Lord, I believe, took that pain from him, and he saw the glory of the Lord. The power of the Roman Catholic Church and the power of kings had remained fairly constant in Europe for about 1,000 years. At this point in history, however, a few people expressed different ideas on both church and government. Because of what a few people, such as English barons, Peter Waldo, John Wickliffe, and John Huss, were willing to do, life would eventually change for everyone in Europe. It was for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not be subject by a yoke of slavery. That's Galatians 5:1. All right, that's really good. What's heavy stuff, heavy stuff. So again, history repeats itself. This is not the first time that we've seen persecution of believers. It may have, and a lot of times, this is the Roman Catholic Church at the time, the head of the church, and it's from people that they are trying to help, that they look up to, and they have similar beliefs. They believe the Bible, and that's where they're receiving the persecution from. Interesting to take note of. Okay, question number 5 was, why do you think the Roman Catholic Church opposed these men? I think they opposed the men because they were a critic of their power, of what they believed. The Catholic Church had become a source of power and wealth, and they were trying to show people a different way, and the Roman Catholic Church did not like that. That's a personal question. I would like to know what your answers are for that, though, so make sure you write something down. Let's get our student workbook out. Page 80. Who began the Waldensian movement that sought to reform church practices? Who was that? The Waldensian movement. Well, if you said Peter Walden, then you are correct. Number 2. Who authorized bishops to search for heresy? Who authorized bishops to search for heresy? That was, I'm thinking it was Pope Lucius III, right? Wasn't it? I read that. Oh, yeah, Pope Lucius III. All right. Number 3, who met the King of England and demanded he approve the Magna Carta? Those were the nobles and the barons, so that should be an answer. English barons, yes, sir. Number 4, who put the seal on the Magna Carta but then did not follow it? Which king was that? That was, if you said that was King John, you are correct. Okay, number 5, who reached an agreement with English barons that brought about peace? Well, it was John's son. Do you guys remember who John's son was? If you said King Henry III, you got it. All right, who is called the Morning Star of the Reformation? If you said John Wickliffe, you are correct. Number 7, who was convicted of heresy and burned at the stake in 1450? That was John Huss. That's so sad. Or Jane Huss, however you pronounce that. Number 8, what institution did Waldo, Wickliffe, and Huss work to reform, which is just a fancy name of saying to change? In this case, change back to the actual scriptures, and that was the Roman Catholic Church. You said Roman Catholic Church? You got it right. All right, so you do have timeline. It's on page 19, and you're going to write in the box for lesson 80. What are you going to write? Let me see. Wickliffe and followers translate the Bible into English. Tyndale was one of those followers. Remember I told you that he was burned at the stake. We do not have maps for this, so until next time. So your next mission.